Yes, Gopiji. Hello, Gopiji.
ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. I'm Gopi K, your host for today. On behalf of VHS Karnataka, very warm welcome to all the wonderful viewers for the 34th edition of Online Samvada, brought to you by VHS Karnataka. We had 33 amazing episodes of Samvada from VHS Karnataka until now, including last Friday's enlightening session on Gurukulas by Acharya M. Alwarji. What an amazing session was that. Akhanda Bharata was cradle of civilization for many millennia and had thriving education system all along. Our ancestors have given us wisdom and knowledge system in various forms. Some are in the form of Vedas, Puranas, Itihasas, Upanishads, Shastras. The list is endless. It goes on and on. Most of them were passed on from generation to generation by oral traditions for millennia, later into scripted, translated into scriptures. Many of our ancestors' ancient knowledge systems were destroyed by the invaders, colonizers, and their proxies, whose only intention was to destroy everything about Bharata. In this process, we lost continuity and the advancement in the knowledge system to a certain extent. But somehow we kept our shastras intact with timeline. The question to be asked is, how did we keep that? The deeper question is, what are shastras? How are the shastras preserved for many millennia? Have we lost any of them? How to revive if anything is lost? And how to take care of the shastras going forward? Today's topic is about SAMAKAALEENATAA of Shastras. To know more about this, we have an eminent special guest speaker, Dr. Vaishnavi Nishankar, Associate Director in Academics in MIT, Institute of Indic Knowledge Studies, Pune. Dr. Vaishnavi worked for more than 13 years of academics experience with teaching Shastras and creating pedagogy based on Shastras at higher education level. Dr. Vaishnavi has a PhD in Sanskrit, Dvaita Vedanta from NSU's Tirupati. Also persuaded PG in Shabdabodha system, language technologies, computational linguistics based on Indian Shastras. I'm also joined by Sri Nikunsha ji, Sri Tejas, Sri Dhansidas ji. Without any further ado, now I request Dr. Vaishnavi ji for enlightening us on Shastras. Please, Doctor, please go ahead and enlighten us. Thank you.
Namaskarbhyah. I heartily thank the Virat Hindustan Sangam, Karnataka, for providing me with this opportunity of sharing my views on something that is very close to my heart, pertaining to the Shastras having an inbuilt mechanism of contemporizing themselves, how they have remained contemporary. This is something that I would like to speak today. So let me start my this particular knowledge sharing with Mangalam, which is which is in the tradition of our Vedic culture. Tvameva vachanam vakta tvameva kriya tvameva sikarta tvameva tvameva mananam manta tvameva tvam nathayantasi yantram tavaham. Can I have the slides, please? So, we know that India was a thriving civilization for millennia, much in contrast to the other civilizations that were present in its time. And this prosperity, both spiritually and materially, was completely supported by, was completely provided by the knowledge systems that fostered this prosperity, both spiritual and material. And these knowledge systems, which sustained themselves for millennia, had to be contemporary, right? If they weren't contemporary, if they hadn't updated themselves from time to time, they would not have sustained for millennia to supply enough knowledge support in the endeavors of a civilization which had been at the peak of prosperity for a long time. So we need to understand that we did have some system, some mechanism of keeping knowledge systems which provided the needed resources for life and vyavahara, basically, whatever we had to do, right? As a nation, at a social level, at a societal level, at a personal level. So this knowledge system that we had must have had a contemporizing mechanism. It must have been contemporary from, so whichever time it went through, it must have had some methodology by which it would have, updated itself depending on the needs of the times. There were times when we had gone across to other civilizations, towards other people for trade. There were knowledge exchanges. For instance, when we look at mathematics, that's a field where there have been exchange of knowledge. So there has been some mechanism that would always update the existing knowledge system. So what is that? What are those contemporizing mechanisms in the Shastras is what we would like to look at today. Now, the blanket statements that we get to hear about Shastras, about, from the newer generation, which is not exposed to the knowledge content, the depth and the width of the Shastras that are just not merely mantras and religious practices, that are not just restricted to religious and spiritual activities. Okay, so the blanket statements that we get to hear about our Shastras are that Shastras are outdated and they do not have any contemporary value. And Shastras are stagnant when it comes to technological advancement. They cannot contribute to any sort of technology or advancement. It was only after the advent of Western science, and it is because of industrialization, Marxism, communism that came into play, which propagated materialism. It's only all because of this that scientific advancement, technological advancement has been possible. Now, what is science and technology is altogether another question, which I don't want to enter now. So, there is no scope for technological advancement based in the Shastric knowledge. This is another blanket statement. Shastras are highly rigid. They are rule-based. They are non-rational. They are like, somebody thinks this is right and that is prescribed. That's what is Shastras all about. They do not have any utility. They don't have, the knowledge is, it's just, speaking in the air. It has nothing to do with utility, no prayojana. Some Shastras are, they are like mystic, or they are, esoteric, something that's trans, that gets into it in a transient mode. And it has nothing to do with, life and living, basically. They speak about moksha all the time, only the final liberation. So it is always leading one to nivritti, not pravritti, not towards progression, but towards regression from action. So Shastras are regressive. Shastras are religious. I don't know what religion has to do in all this, but then yes, Shastras are religious. and they are non-secular. They are focused on, presentation of Hindu Vedic ideologies. They are ritualistic, they are preachy, and they are prescriptive. They do not give scope for any innovation or creation or creativity. They are prescriptive, and one is just supposed to follow them without any question. And that at the moment, okay, whatever happened in the past was, something that happened. But if we look at the Shastras as they definitely are incompatible with the contemporary ways of life and thinking. They don't fit into our lives now. So this is the general understanding about Shastras among the common public. This is what people are, now this is a common modern person's view about the Shastras. Okay, when we go ahead, so in this particular presentation, what I would like to focus on are, of course, I want to defy this particular understanding that Shastras are not contemporary, that Shastras are stagnant. That's not the case. I obviously want to defy them. So I am not going into the entire, it's a very vast plethora of, it's a vast play field. I am just restricting myself to showing only 4 instances, 4 kind of criteria, which will help us understand that Shastra indeed has an inbuilt mechanism of making itself Samakaleena. So what is Samakaleena? Sama is as same, Kalina is time, so belonging to the same time, contemporary. So in being contemporary, what has been the practice, what has been the approach, what has been the mechanism that has been used in the Shastras to keep itself updated and abreast? I'm just going to only look into 4 types of, 4 criteria to show you how this actually works. So one of them is the tradition of teaching, learning, practice, and research. We need to understand that all Shastras are not merely for teaching and learning. They are also, some of them, like when you look at Tantra Vidya, when you look at Ayurveda, when you look at Vastu Vidya, Shilpa Shastra, there are so many, Sangeeta Vidya. So there are so many that are practice based. Okay, so the Guru Shishya Parampara is not restricted only to reading texts. We need to understand that Shastras are not just bookish knowledge. The tradition had both oral and textual literature to it. And oral does not mean, and it does not restrict itself only to the propagation of Vedas. So something like, because Vedas definitely are belonging to the oral tradition of learning, that's fine. But other Shastras also had their own share of oral communication beyond the text. So the text is a consolidation. The textual literature is a consolidation of ideas. It is something like how you publish textbooks these days, you publish research articles these days, you publish blogs. So there are various ways, but that doesn't mean knowledge that is presented in those written literature alone form the knowledge body. It is beyond that. There can be discussions, there can be debates. So all of them which are beyond the textual framework, they are also available. Nextly, I would like to look at the this practice of refining the definition. Refining the defining is, as I call it. So refining the definition. This is called as Lakshana Parishkara. So there was always scope for people to look at whatever are the lakshanas that were given by the acharyas, and then check whether these definitions actually fit or not. How is the mechanism? How does that works? We will have a understanding of it as we go ahead. And then we have this commentarial tradition and commentarial freedom. That is very, very exclusive. We don't find this kind of robust commentarial tradition or commentarial freedom available in any other civilization except the Vedic one, Vedic or non-Vedic, Indic, let us say, wherein the original work is supplemented, it is commented multiple ways. So how does this tradition add to the contemporary of the Shastras? Let us have a look as we go. And then through dialogue and debate, we had the Shastras living all the time. So that also I would like to just bring to focus. So these are the 4 different mechanisms that I am going to explain in brief through this presentation. But I've been saying Shastras, Shastras, Shastras. So what exactly are Shastras? What do we mean by Shastras? So just to have a kind of background of what Shastras can be, I will state an anecdote that we usually, when we have Shastric learning, our teachers always tell us this kind of an anecdote to make us understand what exactly is a worldview, what is a darshana. So it is considered that the Vaisheshika Darshanacharya Kanada, okay, he was also called Akshapada or Kanabhuk, that these were his names. Now this Kanada he was the one who constituted this theory of Paramanu, that the world is composed of Paramanus. These Paramanus in the Vaisheshika terminology are called as Pilu. They are called as Pilu. So on the deathbed, when Kanada was, on his deathbed, people saw that he was, murmuring something. His lips were moving and he was murmuring something. So when they went near him, maybe they thought he has something to say about his property, or his final last desire, something like that, or whether he's feeling some, difficulty. And when they went and heard him, he was continuously muttering, Pilavaha, Pilavaha, Pilavaha. Pilavaha is the Bahuvachana of Pilu. Pilu, Piluhu, Pilu, Pilavaha. Pilavaha means, Paramanus, atoms. Okay, he's the propounder of the atomic theory in the Vaisheshika Darshana. So that shows the kind of, he was looking at the whole world. For him, the whole world was only Pilavaha. So that is the darshana. Okay, darshana means viewing the world, looking at the world. When somebody looks at the world, how does it look to them? So when we say that Shastras or knowledge systems, they are for the sake of researching the truth, to find the truth. Research is for the sake of arriving at the truth. What was the truth for Kanada was Pilavaha. For him, the whole world, wherever he looked, it only appeared to him as atoms. When it was Panini, for him, the whole world looked as word and meaning. When we look at, say, the Sankhya-charya, our Kapila Muni, for him, the whole world looked as, when he saw the world, he looked as, like those 25 tattvas, Panchavimshati tattva, Purusha and Prakriti. He was able to see them as Purusha and Prakriti. So how the world appeared to them. Similarly, if it was a Nayayika, to him, it would appear as the Sapta Padarthas. This is Prithvi, this is Jala, this is Tejas, electricity is Tejas. So you bring any object of the world, they will be able to fit it into the 7 Padarthas. This is what we say. What exactly is this? Is the world view. The way they look at the world, they model the world like this. They have a purpose of doing that. So they have a world view of things. That's the world view. That's the darshana, basically. Now, this is their personal experience. They are able to experience that. So for somebody who is doing a Nada yoga, for him, the whole world would appear as Ahata Dhvani and Anahata Dhvani. Whatever comes to him, okay, this is Ahata Dhvani, this is Anahata. So this is how it appears to them. Okay, so this is out of their experience. When this, this cognition has to be transferred to another person's understanding. Other person has to understand what my experience is. Okay, so I have to delineate it in a logical way, in a way that the other person can understand, because it is not in the other person's experience. It's in my experience. I am able to clearly see that the whole world is only composed of Shabda and Artha. Fine. But the other person is yet to understand it. So when I have to delineate it, express it to another person, I have to make sense to that person by appealing to the person's intellect and to logic. If that doesn't happen, because it's not in the direct experience of the person, we will not be able to make the person a shishya. The person will not, accept that this is the case. So unless there is a strong intellectual, in some cases practice, including in the cases of say yoga, somebody says, of the Ashtanga yoga, you have to come to the state of dharana, you will be able to do this. That's a practice based system. So wherein the Shastra does not restrict itself merely only to the literary, understanding or the intellectual understanding, but also to the experiential through practice. So this delineation has to happen wherein the knowledge is transferred to the other person in some logical, intellectual form, that the other person is able to also understand, gradually imbibe it, and ultimately see what the author is seeing, what the Acharya is seeing. So this tool of transfer of knowledge is Shastra. So in the Shastra, you will see that it is an intellectual talk. It is a Samvada. Basically, it is a transfer of knowledge, which is logical, without which the Acharya will not be able to convince the Shrota. So systematic delineation of darshana addressing the logical prober is the Shastra. So Shastra is the tool, darshana is the experience. So this is what, so we see, as I just a while ago I mentioned, there can be different darshanas, the worldviews, they come up in the form of, say, what is the darshana that a Sankhya-charya will have will be different from what a Vyakarana-charya will have, etc., etc., etc. Okay. So the purpose of both of these, cognitive elements, darshana and shastra, is to arrive at truth. While darshana is for oneself, shastra is for let us say, for propagation, for others, for the other people to understand. Okay. So this being the case, does Shastra have, how do I codify, how do I understand? Okay, now I understood what Shastra, what is the purpose of Shastra, how Shastra comes about. So if I have to just, describe Shastra, how do I do it? So if we just define Shastra in a single sentence, it goes like Vaktrushrotroho abhimatam ananya sadhyam phalam udishya tat sadhana bhutam pramanantara apraptam artham pratipadayatam vakyana samuhaha shastram. Okay, so there are some of, I have just kind of tried to highlight each of these for us to just pick up and easily grasp the sense. So here, Vaktrushrotroho abhimatam means there is a Vakta, a person who's going to render the Shastra, and there's a Shrota, a person who's going to receive the Shastra, and both are agreed upon this particular transaction. So there is a transfer of knowledge. So the listener is willing to listen to the speaker, and the speaker is willing to speak to the listener. So this transfer of knowledge is there. And then Ananya Sadhyam Phalam Uddishya. So phalam is a specific purpose, as a prayojana, having an objective. And how is this? Ananya Sadhyam. It is not possible for us to attain this purpose without the Shastra. That's sort of a objective. So we need the Shastra to attain this objective. That's sadhana bhutam. In order to achieve this objective, we do have a validated means. This is a tested means of sadhana, means tool or instrument or means. Okay. So in order to attain this purpose that has been envisaged, for example, let us say, if I say envisaged purpose, it may not. So let's say, we say Sharira Madhyam Khalu Dharma Sadhanam. Sharira is very much needed for Dharma Sadhana. So Swasthya of Sharira is very important. Now that is a purpose. To achieve that purpose of Ananya Sadhya, that is an Ananya, you can't achieve it through, study of, Paramanus, or through study of, say, Sangeeta Shastra or something like that. So there has to be a body of knowledge which is able to address this. And how is this? Explaining the category. So pramanantara apraptam artham pratipadayatam vakyanam samuhaha. And this Shastra would explain the categories and which are not understood by us by it is not those categories, and those sort of padarthas are not available from other means, but only through this shastra. We can also take a modern example to understand. For example, if you take the word mass in physics has a particular sense which is not used elsewhere. The term, when I say mass in physics, referring to the volume and weight of an object, or the weight of an object pertaining in a given volume or in a shape. So that mass is a technical term. Now, no other shastra, no other body of knowledge would use it in the same terminology or in the same sense. So, pramanantara apraptam, the other pramanas do not use it in the same and do not provide us the knowledge of those particular categories. The Vakyanam Samuha, the verbal testimony or the group of sentences which provides us with this kind of objective oriented knowledge is the Shastra. So you can see all Shastras, like say Artha Shastra, you have Vastu Vidya, you have Shilpa Shastra, you have Nyaya, Vedanta, whichever Shastras, Vyakarana, Sahitya Shastra, whatever. All of these would fall in line with this particular definition. They all have a purpose, they have an objective to attain, and all of them are delineated using certain terminologies, certain technical terminologies, which are used in particular context, just in those Shastric context, and not in that context elsewhere. They are not used in the same context elsewhere. And the sentences which are composed to describe these categories that the Acharya of that particular Shastra has envisaged. So this is the definition of Shastra. So what does the Shastra in that case do? This is not just for the Indian Shastras. It's just not only for Bharatiya Shastra. This is what all, Shastras across the world. Shastra here, I mean any knowledge body. So you can call it sciences or, whatever. So all of these knowledge fields, knowledge areas, they do this. What do they do? Uddesha, Lakshana, Pariksha, and Nirnaya. So Uddesha is the taxonomy. It provides insight into the, what are the categories that I am going to describe in my Shastra. It defines each and every term that is being used. If it's scientific term, say for example, it's a medical term, it is defined. Engineering term, it's defined. Whatever, any term you take, it is provided with a definition. And then whatever is said about that particular, whatever is the description, whatever is the whatever is the idea that is being presented about that category or that particular padartha, it is put to test. Does it pertain? Does it meet this particular standard of pratyaksha pramana, anumana pramana? There are many pramanas. I'm sure you would have done that from the some other sessions. So there is a pariksha, and then there is a conclusive a statement that comes out of it, which is Nirnaya. This is exactly how Shastras also operate. So Shastras also provide Uddesha, Lakshana, and Pariksha. So we see that these are the Shastras. This is the Shastra that we have, this sort of a Shastra, which is having an objective oriented, approach towards acquisition of knowledge. This is contemporized. This is made Samakaleena through the tradition of teaching, learning, practice, and through research. This is not difficult to understand, for sure. We see that in the Shastric texts, it is very well presented. It is very well analyzed and presented as to what exactly are the knowledge features, what are the elements of knowledge, who are the stakeholders of knowledge, what are their characteristics, who can be a good learner, who can be a good teacher, who can be a, what sort of teaching does not stand standards. If it is an apprentice, how should the apprentice be? How do you form a pedagogy? How do you form a learning structure? How do you form a curriculum? What exactly? So we have a Shastric research methodology. How do you understand and present knowledge? How do you do samshodhana? How do you actually conduct research? And then how to document it. You have something called as Tantra Yuktis, which provide us with the idea of how to document texts. Okay, and then there is Vada, there is polemics, dialectics pertaining to it can happen between a teacher and student. It need not always be between two Vadi and Prativadis, two opposed people who having different ideologies. It is very much, Vada is very much encouraged between a guru and a shishya. And then you have the tradition of commenting. Commenting we will have a look in a greater detail later. So we find that all of this, so any shastra, when we start studying, we have this Anubandha Chatushtaya, Adhikari, Prayojana, Vishaya, and Sambandha at the beginning of the text. It clearly states who this text is meant for, who is the Adhikari, who is eligible reader of this particular text. If you form that eligibility criteria, if you're somebody who adheres or who falls under that criteria, you take the book and study, otherwise don't touch it. So there are levels of adhikaris, which is why we also have levels of books. So the texts are not written, all of them are not written with the same sort of difficulty levels. So depending on, so we see that there is systematic presentation focusing on the learner or the reader, which is very clearly evident in the Shastric texts. So I have given some instances where in case of Charaka Samhita, Kavya Mimamsa, how there is clear elucidation of the nature and characteristics of all the stakeholders of the knowledge system. Then the second item that I was talking about is the refining the definition. So we saw Uddesha, true conclusions. So that being the case, a lot of emphasis is given on refining the definition, Lakshana Parishkara. So there is also a mechanism of how you arrive at the most nirdushta, the most error-free, definition. So the flaws that can actually mal the definition are ativyapti, avyapti, and asambhava. So a definition which is devoid of ativyapti, avyapti, and asambhava is considered to be a error-free definition. Hence, when we look at the commentaries of, or when we look at Vada Granthas, when we look at the text itself where the author is trying to define something, we see how the flawlessness of the definition is always also validated by the commentator or by the author through checking whether there is ativyapti, avyapti, or asambhava of a definition. Only then, after refining such, with such terminology, is the padartha, the scientific padartha, taken for further analysis. So, for instance, I would just like to give you a small illustration from Tarka Sangraha, how this, ativyapti, avyapti, sort of how it is tested. So, there is a definition of karanam. There is karya, karana, cause and effect. Okay, so what is the definition of karana if we have to look at that? The definition is karya niyata purva vritti karanam. Karya is effect, product. Purva vritti is being present before. Niyata means always. So karanam is something that always is existing before the karya. It has to be present before the karya. If we just say this, is it enough? Is it a good definition of karana? So this is being, now these are two different commentaries, Nyaya Bodhini and Deepika. I just take Nyaya Bodhini as an illustration for you to quickly go through this. So karanam lakshayati, the karana is being defined. Karya niyata iti, the karya niyata purvavritti karanam, that's being defined here. Karyam prati niyatatve sati purvavrittitvam karanatvam. what comprises of karana? That which is always present before. So niyata and purva. These are two essential words. They have to be always present and they have to be present before. So niyatatvam visheshana anupadane purvavartina rasabhaderapi घटादि कारणम स्यात् अतः नित्यत्वे सति इति विशेषणम. Now this is a ativyapti case. So I will just say it in simple language. What it says is, if we do not apply niyatatva, so if I just say karya purva vritti karanam, and I don't say karya niyata purva vritti karanam, I just drop the word niyata. In that case, say for example, I'm making a pot, okay, and the pot needs clay. The clay is to be transported from one place to the other. The clay is sometimes brought in a van, sometimes it is brought in a bullock cart, sometimes it is put on the back of a donkey and it is brought. Okay, if I were to say karya purva vritti karanam, if karana is something, if cause is something that exists before the karya niyata purva vritti karanam, if I have to say karana is something that exists before the effect, then even a donkey would become karana for a pot. Why? Because donkey brought the clay and it existed before the pot. So is it supposed to be a karana? Is it supposed to be a definitely a karana for pot? No. Why? Because instead of rasabha, you can have some other, even a human being can carry the clay on his head and come. So it doesn't have to be a karana. So if I say niyata, then if I say always that particular entity has to be there to become karana, in that case, now this rasabha is out of context. We say because, yeah, it doesn't have to always be there. So niyata purvavrittina dandarupaderapi ghatakaranattvam syadataha ananyatha siddha padam api karana lakshanam niveshaniyam. Now, if I say, okay, now if I have not put niyata, if I have put niyata and I do not put purvavarti, okay, in that case, what happens? Now, it can happen in such a case if I don't, or just if I say karya purva, karya and not add niyata purva vritti karana. If that is the case, niyata purva vrittina danda rupaderapi ghatakaranatam syad ataha ananyata siddhamapi karana lakshanam niveshanim. He's saying, just by saying karana niyata purva vritti doesn't satisfy. For example, there is a wheel on which the pot is made. The wheel has to be rotated, right? How they rotate is using a staff. The staff is used to, bring speed to the wheel, and it is used to rotate the pot. Now, this staff has a color, and this color exists in the staff always. The karana, now karya is ghata, and karya purva vritti is the staff. It is existing before the pot has come into existence, and it is always present in the staff. Now, this being the case, even the color of the staff would be accounted as the karana of the pot, which is not what we want. So ananyatha siddham padam niveshaniyam. You have to add an extra element there to make this definition complete, as ananyatha siddham means indispensable. It has to be indispensable. It has to be always present before the effect. It has to be indispensable, and it has to be pre-existing to the effect. That is karana. So this is so you can see that you have a technique wherein you are, so while the Moola Granthakara has just given the definition as karya niyata purva vritti karanam, the commentator is adding this element of ananyatha siddham, indispensability, to make the lakshana more refined. So this process of refining the definition is considered to be a very, very significant process in the composition of texts that we see. So this is what, like, something that invariably exists before the effect is the cause of this. If this is what we would say, like the clay or the wheel that exists before the pot is formed would be the karana. This is the intended. I want to say that clay is the cause or the wheel is the cause of the pot. This is what I intend to say. But what happens when I say something is invariably existing before the effect of is cause, then even a donkey could be, invariably existing before. Okay. Similarly, there can also be ativyapti in the color of a staff becoming the cause of the pot. Neither of these is what I intend. So I refine the definition as something that invariably exists before an effect and is indispensable to bring that effect is called the cause. So we see this Lakshana Parishkara always happening, in the Shastra Prakriya. And then we also see that the commentarial tradition has always helped in bringing Samakaalenata to the, Shastra. We don't look at Shastra as a particular text. Shastra is, all the texts of a Shastra comprise the Shastra. So wherever the tradition starts and wherever it tradition, which actually enhances this particular Samakaalenata. It brings the Shastra to contemporary all the time. We see how this happens is there is a long commentarial tradition we see. I'll give you an example of Ayurveda just after this. So these commentaries are varied. You have Bhashya, Vartika, Vritti, Tika, Tippani, Panjika, so many types, and these types of commentaries serve specific purposes. Some of them are for students, some of them are for scholars, some of them have the need of amending whatever has been said previously. Some of them are for countering, what has been brought in by a Purva Pakshi, by the opposition. So each of the commentary has a particular, role in its, exposition of the Mula Grantha. So there are usually long commentarial traditions. Like for example, if we consider Charaka Samhita, even if we consider it was composed in 2nd century BC, we see that till 19th century AD, we have had commentaries on commentary. Accommodated in the comment. In the Brahma Sutra and Bhagavad Gita, we know how many sort of commentaries are there, how many sort of interpretations are there. There is scope for this, and this would not happen unless and until there is an element of freedom given to the commentator. Okay, so we have to accept that there is commentarial freedom, there is scope for innovation and creativity, owing to which this variety in the commentaries is possible. And then there are certain commentaries, which come to counter the source text itself. The Shastra itself is challenged. Okay, we see this in the case of the Purva Mimamsa school, where there is a Bhatta school. Prabhakara was the Shishya of Kumarila Bhatta, and he was not convinced with the way Kumarila Bhatta was interpreting the Vedic texts. And he countered with his own arguments against this. And then Kumarila Bhatta went ahead and said, please, you go ahead and make your own school of thought. Okay, so that's why we see that through commentaries, the original sources and thoughts could also be countered. And then we have later objections are taken in, amendments are done. For example, in the Paniniya Parampara, we see Panini, Vartikakara, Mahabhashyakara, the Patanjali. We see that through the centuries, they have accommodated more and more usages, newer usages, which were not present in the time of Panini. They have accommodated them also into the, Paninian rules. They have done this through the commentaries. So it has been made contemporary. The usage has been made contemporary. We see that this is happening. And then we have also this practice of establishing a completely new school of thought, not just in opposition, but shunning the previous one and then starting a new school, like this, where we see Gangesha Upadhyaya has done in the case of Navya Nyaya. He completely decoupled himself from the Prachina Nyaya. Some elements were taken, that's fine, but then they had a completely, totally new ideology, new purpose to match through the Navya Nyaya. So also we see there is a tradition of Navina Vyakarana. So these are all, so you can see through this, this is what I was saying, that from the we see that from the 4th century BC onwards, time and again, and there are practically, I've not taken, of course, obviously all the commentaries. As I mentioned here, there are more than 60 commentaries, and most of them are not available to us. That's one of the other, greater grudges, that we don't have many commentaries available to us. But we see that this tradition of commentary has always seen to it that the Shastra is made contemporary. To this day, even some of the acharyas that you have spoken, you have heard speaking, like Virnarayanacharya Pandurangiji, they are still writing commentaries. Even now, that tradition of commenting is going on and on. And the last system that the last mechanism of contemporizing that I had mentioned in the overview is the Vada Parampara, the dialogue and dialectics, wherein most of it happened orally. For example, there are many famous ones, like the debate between Mandana Mishra and Shankaracharya. There was one between Appaya Dikshita and Vijendra Swami. So there are many famous debates in that which were conducted orally. And to this day, this Vada Parampara continues. We see Vada happening at Varanasi and other places. They do still happen. But apart from that, there has also been a textual tradition which has always come into this polemic mode, wherein the previous for instance, in this case of I have taken one restricted this is one grantha that is commented in that Vada Paddhati, where Nyayamrita was written by Vyasatirtha. That was there was a rejoinder on Nyayamrita by in the form of Advaita Siddhi. For Advaita Siddhi, there was a rejoinder, and on. You can see that it was a continuous, it's just on a single text that this particular Vada Grantha Parampara happened. This is in the textual form, but Vada has always happened even in the oral format, where we have seen that people have arrived at truth, accepted it, and even converted their ideology. When we see from the Purva Mimamsa ideology to Advaita ideology, we see that Mandana Mishra did and became Sureshwaracharya. So this sort of mechanisms wherein they are built into the system of Shastra itself, in the tradition, in such a way that knowledge can always be contemporary. So only recently, when this knowledge propagation has been curbed, it has been restricted to just few pockets, that we are not able to experience the impact of this contemporizing mechanism on a large scale for us, which has also curbed all of the advancements, so-called technological, let us say, or scientific, let us say. I don't know, science is empirical, but it's just not only empirical progress that is being addressed in the Indian knowledge systems. It goes beyond that. It works wonderfully on non-matter based knowledge areas. So we see that this large scale impact of contemporizing the Shastras is in a curbed mode at the right now. If we are able to re-imbibe this particular mechanism, I'm sure that we will be able to bring in this larger impact for the benefit of the society. So this is what I had to present for all of you today. I'm so thankful for this opportunity that has been provided by Virat Hindustan Sangam for sharing my thoughts here. I'm available for questions if you have any.
Dante, please go ahead with any questions.
Before I jump into my questions, I would like to thank you for a very insightful session this evening, Dr. Vaishnavi. It's insightful and as well as intriguing. Some of these thoughts may have been covered during the session, but I'm just trying to consolidate your thoughts in the form of answers to some of my questions that I have today. One common question I received from a couple of my friends who are also new parents is considering how the current generation tries to see everything under the purview of modern science. How do we ensure that we inculcate this knowledge in the younger ages?
Okay. um, the younger ages doesn't, I mean, the barrier to the younger age is the older age, those in the older age. So where will the younger age get it from? Okay, there has to be a source from which they are able to get it. It cannot always be the teacher. Okay,
Right.
because the teacher is also being taught by somebody where the teacher is learning from. So these days we see Sanskrit is not taught in Sanskrit Bhasha with medium at schools, and we keep telling what is this, why this is not happening. People are the teacher doesn't even know Sanskrit. But does the teacher have an access to learn Sanskrit in Sanskrit? Is the larger question. Now there are avenues for parents, there are avenues for the elder generation also to acquire. I'm sure VHS is one of such sources which is doing monumental effort in bringing this to a platform at a national scale. So there are a lot of blogs, there are a lot of courses which are now available to generations, just not the younger ones. Now of course there is a lot of effort also being done and that also particularly with NEP, National Education Policy, to bring in to gradually bring in this Indic knowledge thought into the academic process. NEP is also opening out, Indic knowledge studies in technology institutes like IITs, triple ITs, IIMs. They have to have some involvement of Indic knowledge systems, is what they are saying. But are we equipped enough to supply them? Is the next question. How much preparedness do we have to address a generation of empirically, scientifically, within quotes, trained, oriented society to a more advanced, to a more progressive knowledge system like that of the Shastric system? Is what is the next question. Are we ready to deliver? In this case, I would also emphasize, we see that the Shastric people nowadays, they have started realizing this is very essential. And you can see people conversing in English while they have been trained in gurukulas. They have had their education, like for example Veeranarayanacharya Pandurangi, Tirumala Kulkarniji, Devanathacharya. There's so many. Some of them have already even addressed here in English. You will not believe they have never studied one word of English when they were in their gurukulas. They have trained a particular generation. They have taken on them this onus of learning a language, the structure of which they have never countered. But we in India who have mother tongues which are very much aligned to Sanskrit, right? It is so much more easier for people to learn Sanskrit. This should be taken as a necessity. Unless and until a generation comes wherein this becomes a comfortable language, it will not be possible for us to provide it to. I will see, the basic thing is this: if I am going to have a text in Sanskrit with a translation, I get to understand what, and I hope that's a good translation, not like the ones of Pollux. If I am able to lay my hands on a good translation, I understand that stuff in Sanskrit. Okay, good. That is all you can do. But just imagine, if you know Sanskrit, you have the whole lot of literature open out to you, right? And it is not difficult. You won't believe it. It's not difficult for people who know Indian languages, because at least anywhere between 40 to 70% of their own mother tongues are they are having elements of Sanskrit in it. So it's really not difficult. So if the older generation arises to this fact that what we have gone through, the knowledge, what should I say, eclipse that we have gone through should not impact our younger generation. Equipping themselves with this knowledge so that they are able to propagate it in the authentic, form to the younger generation.
Right. In fact, one of my following questions was regarding the accessibility, and is it even possible to make a methodical effort to make some of these knowledge available as part of the curriculum, right? I mean, our exposure to modern science has been from the beginning, but some of these shastras or principles or practices are things that we were just taught at home and something that we just practiced, and some of us questioned, some of us didn't, but the current generation does. I mean, they take the liberty to question. They want a validation to anything that you ask for or anything you ask them to do or practice. So is it even possible to methodically make this part of the curriculum? And if there is anything that as common people that we should take responsibility to and make it a practice to bring such knowledge back in your household?
Definitely. So the younger generation is being the Nachiketas that were. It is the medieval generation that didn't have the pleasure of questioning, okay, and querying. That is not a feature of our tradition. Our tradition has always encouraged. You have a Prashnopanishad, you have a Kenopanishad, where they are all named after question. The medieval been shut off from this particular privilege. So the younger generation are actually being their originals. So nothing wrong about that. There are platforms. There are you can explore. There are many. I don't know whether I could name a few here. If that would be, I mean, I don't want them to be something like a propaganda, but there are, of course, Sanskrit Bharati is doing amazing work with propagation of Sanskrit. Please involve yourself. You don't have to, even the older generation doesn't have to do this, but everything doesn't have to come curricular. Everything doesn't have to come through the school. There can be non-curricular learning. There can be non-curricular approach to knowledge acquisition. So these can be imbibed gradually, and they are actually having more strong impact than the curricular ones, because many a times the orientation that luckily the modern system is showing is rote. Okay, you read the notes, you don't have to understand anything, you write and forget it after 10 years. No, you will not even remember it, then that's perfectly okay. Okay, but that is not how a non-curricular teaching happens. It is skill enhancement. They focus on learners being able to imbibe it. For example, there is something called as Agastya curriculum, which is able to provide shastra based knowledge to a younger generation, including Sanskrit knowledge. As long as we don't look at Sanskrit as a knowledge medium, as long as you're just going to look at that as a language, why are we learning English today? Not because I appreciate English literature or because I love reading English poems, because English is the knowledge medium today. So if I need to acquire knowledge in science, in social sciences, anywhere, if I don't know English, I'm not going to have knowledge. The same applies to Sanskrit also. Looking at this is exactly what has happened when Sanskrit has been confined to university teaching under arts stream. Then you learn Sanskrit as an arts. What happens in MA English, for instance? What are you taught? You're taught literature, you're taught grammar, you're taught something more of appreciation, reporting, journalism, whatever pertaining to a literary endeavor. That is all what Sanskrit has also been restricted to in providing knowledge to the for in the past 100 to 120 years. The university has restricted the knowledge or knowledge systems that are available in Sanskrit to merely topics which are literary in nature. You would just somewhere Vedanta is all that they do. What about the plethora of knowledge areas? Like you have Sangeeta, you have Ayurveda. Ayurveda is not even taught in a Sanskrit university because
Right.
they don't have a license to teach, medical things. And Ayurvedic colleges don't teach it in Sanskrit. Not even a single faculty at Ayurveda universities need to know Sanskrit. Some may know just because they have interest, but it is not a mandatory requirement. So this is the plight through which we are going. So unless and until this generation arises to this understanding that Sanskrit is a knowledge medium, it is just not a language for literary appreciation or literary understanding. It is a knowledge medium. Those lakhs and lakhs of manuscripts that are waiting to die, that have all this scientific knowledge, not merely empirical knowledge, but scientific knowledge ingrained in them. I don't know how long we are going to still have them in preservation. We are the losers. So I am very, very sure if approached, accessed, the loss is not for the Shastras, it is for us. As long as this particular understanding is not brought into this generation, which is responsible for the knowledge transfer to the next generation, we are different. We are definitely not doing justice to our posterity.
Right. Thanks for your time and answering my questions, Gopi,
There is a
and
question
over
on
to
the
you.
screen. There's a question on the
Yeah,
screen.
why
Please
are
go.
many commentaries not available to us? Please, what happened to them? They perished. I'm so sorry to say. Many of them perished. Many of them got lost. You won't believe, because the Shastric tradition got vichcheda. There was a, it just got cut off. Uh, uh, People in the homes, they didn't want to keep it just to do Saraswati Puja. They would throw them away in the rivers. With very great difficulty, people who understood the value of knowledge that are available in these manuscripts, they would go begging. Can you believe? They would go begging for manuscripts and then bring it and make a library out of it. And there are instances of these that are available in our culture pathetically. Why? Because some 2-3 generations of Indians completely got converted to modern education, did not understand the value of Shastric learning. They didn't want this kachada in their house, so they would just throw it away. So this sort of, we have lost so much. You all know about the Nalanda, university burning, the burning of the
3 months.
manuscripts. It sustained itself for days. Can you imagine how much we have lost? So it is up to us to take charge of what is remaining, and to at least protect that for the posterity.
Yeah, and also Takshashila, like we lost a lot of
I'm sorry, yeah,
manuscripts.
not Nalanda. It was
Not
Takshashila. I'm so
Nalanda.
sorry. Yeah.
Takshashila
Takshashila.
and Nalanda also. Nalanda also. I mean, like there are records saying that more than 3 months the library is burned, for more than 3 months. So it was like terrible thing. And there is somewhere the information as well about some of these scriptures have been taken out of Nalanda by the preservers and moved into Tibet. So I think, to be precise, to Lhasa, I think when Chinese took over, CCP took over, I think they might have got hold of all those things. And they were contacting, I think they didn't have the expertise in Sanskrit, right? They were trying to contact some of the Indian Sanskrit experts. I think maybe they're working on some of the technologies. I don't know, God knows. I mean, what are the technologies they might be finding in them at this point? And also, once Rajiv Malhotraji also mentioned about the lot of our scripts is lying down in their libraries underneath. I mean, like what you call undergrounds. So just in the dust, they're lying down there. I think we need to bring back them. I think our government should work on that, and any Indian artifacts should belong to India. So they should.
That is just too far, Gopiji. I would actually say what we have is not less. It is going to take
Okay.
lots and lots of years for us even to collate what we have and try to understand. We'll have to understand that we have lost the technical language. We don't know what exactly the terminology is pertaining to, say, metallurgy, or to many a times architecture, So many of the Rasayana Vidya, so many are there, Vrikshayurveda. We have lost so much of the knowledge pertaining to it. It's not, so they are technical terms. What is the meaning of those technical terms? How do we approach them? How do we understand them? Why? Because that technical side of Shastras has been cut off from us deliberately. We need to understand this. And if it is not now, after 2 more generations, I don't know where we will be. So it is something that we people need to think and work right now. So actually, you'll be very surprised to know our institution for Indic knowledge studies is just the only institute in the whole world which runs a Vedic science program. Everywhere else, it is only in arts. So only looking at textual, literary or near literary, Shastric knowledge is what we have been. Textual, theoretic, that's what we have been looking. So because we wanted to break this, we have introduced MSc in Vedic Sciences. We have already run 5 years of the program. Now we are into the 6th year, wherein we look at application, we look at the thought process. We don't make Shastragnyas. We try to make Shastrakaras out of this particular program. That's what we endeavor to do. So there are avenues. That's what I would like the listeners to know, the viewers to know. There are avenues, and if it really inspires you, if this moves you, if this, I would be happy if even a couple of them would be able to know the gravity of the situation and take it on them to work for it.
Doctor,
Gopiana, if I may ask another question, for the benefit of the viewers and for myself as well, people who take up these courses, what would be the career options for them? I am sure a lot of people may be interested to explore, but end of the day, what is in it for me, right? I mean, that is the question that
Okay.
that stays on.
Yeah. See, we are not trying to make careers. Okay. What we are saying is you might be in any career right now. I'm speaking about the current generation. But if you want to look at, like, for example, in our MSc programs, the average age is 40 plus of students. Okay. They're all working professionals who are managing their academic study along with it. We're not saying we want to make careers, because it's not possible. You know that the career options based in Sanskrit or Shastras is restricted only to teaching, learning in universities, colleges, whatever. We are not looking at creating careers. We are looking at transforming careers. You may be in whichever career field you are in, but if you are able to add that edge and touch of Vedic science, Vedic worldview to it, then you can see how that application helps you in your own professional field also.
Doctor, I think for the same question, like I just thought of asking before that. I mean, as a regular science grad or something, are they eligible for that MS Vedic science? I mean, what is the criteria? Is it mandatory to learn how Sanskrit has it?
No. For the MSc program, having any bachelor's degree is good. If you have any bachelor's degree without knowledge of Sanskrit is good, because on the basis of that, what we would be teaching Sanskrit in the program itself. And the Sanskrit that we teach is not for learning the language, but for reading the Shastric texts. So we teach you technical Sanskrit at 2 levels, and we teach you usage-based Sanskrit at 1 level there within the program. So, and the program is executed in a bilingual. It's Sanskrit and English, basically. And there we are not looking, as I previously said, we are not looking at texts. We are looking at knowledge systems as thought models, as structures, as thought structures, and as application, resources. That's how they are looked upon. So that way,
is it available online? Is it available online?
It is available fully online. It is a fully online program. Yes.
Okay. So many can consider it like as an optional.
Yes.
I mean, not
And
optional.
those sessions, yeah, and the sessions are what should I say, professional timing friendly. So the classes, you have self-paced videos with review sessions which are timed at professionally convenient hours. So
And of course, coming to the basics, right now the society is being influenced by the Western, and our history has been misled and rewritten. I mean, like what you call, I don't want to say history is distorted history. So it's been written by the Western and the Marxist ideologues mainly. Uh, I mean, like how to take care of that, like with a with the original true history? How do we bring back the true history rather?
that's a difficult question for me because Shastras, if we see, as my teachers have always said, uh, the Vedic way of knowledge is not historical. It does not have a history. Okay, it is that is itihasa, but there is no history. So, what is the history? History, political history, or if we want to understand, that's a different story. Okay, if we are looking at the political history, or if we are looking at how knowledge systems evolved, because we want to know the commentarial tradition, who follows whom, that's another part of the history. How will we rewrite, how will we redo this history? It's actually difficult. You do have sources, in the sense how we concur, is by cross checking the texts. Many a times you can see references. This is how we do references. There are references, for example, Kalidasa. How do you place when Kalidasa, what is the time of Kalidasa? Is by the reference of Kalidasa in the later, kavyas. So somebody says Kalidasa was my guru and he belonged to 4th century AD. We know that Kalidasa belonged to a time before that. So you have to reconstruct. I'm not saying it's only with Sanskrit. You will have to go into the regional language, vernacular literature also, wherein you could find folk, lore that might be describing, that might be, eulogizing the local hero for whatever valor or value, things that have done. There are reflections of the society in the literature that is available. It will need deep sort of a study for us to reconstruct this, definitely.
Thank you, Doctor. Nikunja, any questions?
No, I have no questions. I would really thank Vaishnavi ji for a fantastic insight. In fact, I think it's one of the best sessions that I've heard till date. Thank you very much for accepting our offer and coming over and making this lovely discourse of yours. I really thank on behalf of Karnataka VHS for your time that you really spared to give knowledge to our viewers today. Thank you very much.
The pleasure is mine. And I also congratulate VHS Karnataka for the commendable work it's doing. And I really wish it adds glory to our, Vedic tradition. That will be my
Thank you very
prayer.
much. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Namamsi.
Thank you, Doctor, for really accepting us our request and enlightening us on this topic. And really appreciate that. And thank you for this. And thank you, Nikunji. Thank you, Dantriji. And thank you, Tejas, Ishwarayar, and Rakeshji for all the help. Last but not least, thank you all the wonderful viewers for making this session Samvada success. Please stay safe. And also please do visit and register at vhsindia.org for further amazing online sessions from VHS Samvada. Thank you all. Jai Sri Ram.
Thank
Namamsi.
you.